So, hello everybody. Thank you for staying with us for that. I hope it wasn't very boring so far, and you are now fresh enough to listen to the keynote talk of this first day. It is an enormous pleasure for me to introduce Andra. After, I think, more than 10 years since Edith was in Iași first, while I was having a patterns lecture grant, and I invited Edith to deliver a lecture to our students. Now it's the second time, and I'm truly honored that she accepted our invitation. I will briefly say a few words, although every one of you knows her, but still it's a pleasure and an honor to read this from her biography. She's a Hungarian art historian who holds a PhD in art history from Eötvös University in Budapest. She's also a senior member of the Institute of Art History of Arts Research Center for the Humanities in Budapest. Her main interest concerns Eastern and Central European modern and contemporary art, gender issues, socially engaged art, public art, critical theories, a socialist condition, and nationalism in the region. As a researcher, she was a member of the advisory board of the Research of Hungary of the exhibition Gender Check, Femininity and Masculinity in the Art of Eastern Europe, that was installed at Munich in Vienna in 2008-2009. And she was a core member of the international seminar series Writing Art History in East Central Europe, organized by the research and academic program at the Clark Art Institute, Williamstown, in 2010-2011. She was also a member of the Patterns Traveling Lecture Set, and delivered a lecture entitled Writing Central European Art History, organized by the World University Service Austria, Poznan, Belgrade, Cluj, Vienna, in 2008. She had also several courses at East Central European universities, among them at New York College in Bucharest, Institute for Advanced Study, at the Academy of Fine Arts and Design in Bratislava, at the Estonian Academy of Art in Tallinn, and at the CE, of course, in Central European University in Budapest. And it has also been part of very important series of seminars funded by the KEMKI Foundation. Among them, she was a colleague of ours in the project periodization in the history of art in East Central Europe, and its conundrums how to tackle them. That was developed at New York College in Bucharest. And currently, she's also a senior member of the project Understanding 1989 in East Central Europe that is taking place in Poznan in collaboration with also University of Bucharest, among others. Today's talk will provide a framework for So today's talk will provide a wider framework of interrogation for some of our researches, because we already quoted heavily the what does this century history. I was among the latest to quote it in that text. So, now Edith will offer us another one to quote for the following 2 or 3 months.
Thank you very much. I'm truly absolutely grateful for this invitation, because keynote lecture gives a possibility for the other genre I like very much to show a bigger trajectory. Otherwise, I like very much close reading and case study. This is something else. I would like to refer back to Thomas' morning presentation that he gave us a chart, and now I will go beyond to those charts. So, okay. In 2014, Barack Obama made an infamous glib remark on art history in his speech. Folks can make a lot more, potentially, with skilled manufacturing of the trades than they might with an art history degree. To prevent getting a bunch of irritated emails, he assured the audiences that there is nothing wrong with an art history degree. I love art history. An art historian still wrote an immediate reply to the website of the White House, not an outraged one, but rather, look at what we do well, statement emphasizing that we challenge students to think, read, and write critically. The president wrote a handwritten note for apology, underlining that he was just trying to encourage young people that a technical training can also lead to an honorable career, not just a college degree. The drive behind the recently published book, Socially Engaged Art History and Beyond, is to confront the implication of the presidential speech that art history is out of touch with reality and overtly self-referential. It argues for the potential usefulness of the skills of looking closely, visual analysis and critical interpretation in a highly visual and media-based society that can contribute to strengthening democracy and supporting positive social changes. The volume coined the term on the model of the related art practice, that is, a public, community-facing and collaborative art history. The writers felt the need for introspection and also looked for traces of social basis and responsibility in the genealogy of the discipline. The advocated path for the art history as a kind of applied science might have fallen on the other extreme, but directs our attention to the presentness and situationness of any methodological changes, despite the rigorous theoretical underpinning and accounts. Panofsky's iconography cannot be separated from his personal life, even if it is less obvious than the disillusionment after the Molotov Ribbentrop Pact of Greenberg in leftist ideas behind the theory of modernism. Even T.J. Clark, champion of the reinvigorated social art history, couldn't ignore the milieu of modern London of his youth and its contemporary culture when describing the 19th century Parisian life. London mode, what you can see on the picture, working-class teenager modernist disguised as middle-class jazz enthusiast, colored Clark's rendering of the Parisian Colicot as an example of the city's perpetual parade in late 19th century, as Thomas Crowe so compellingly illuminates. Now let's look at East Central European region. Do we take into consideration that our theory and practice is equally socially specific and situated, or are we still looking for a permanent residency on the top floor of the ivory tower? When it comes to selecting a specific time frame, topic, and method, do we contemplate a bit about the reason, agenda for our choices, or we are simply not bothered with such scrutiny? Could it be the case that the eagerness to follow the latest theories and methodologies outshine the need for introspection, and instead we simply consider our choices tiny and organic, business as usual? I believe the time has come to take into account that our practice is equally evolving in a turbulent time, and on the top of that, the traffic is also frequently diverted. The road to be followed is much bumpier and full of blind corners than of those who were given a reality check to become more down to earth. Furthermore, the semi-peripheral regions might add the dilemma of orientation and positioning as well. According to Greek mythology, Procrustean offers hospitality to weary travelers on the road between Athens and Eleusis. However, one has to feed his iron fed. Otherwise, he chops off the protruding limbs of those too tall or stretches those who are too short in order to tailor them to the uniform measure. To use his bed as a metaphor for writing art history, the question arises: What is the motivation to conform to the mainstream at all costs, brushing off any doubts about the benefits of the truncated version? And how about the other option? Instead of following a one-size-fits-all approach to life on the Freudian couch, to confront our subconscious desire and paralyzing fears. Looking back on the journey of the last 30 years or so allows us to recount the trail with its twists and turns and to uncover the shortcuts and the missed sections of the road, as well as to detect how far did we get. In response to the collapse of the Soviet satellite system and the changed geopolitical configuration after 1989, all the changes and shifts in art historiography aim to find the proper discourse and theoretical framework from the next. The pivotal notion, I just will run over this 30 years. A pivotal notion of post-colonial theory, the other, came in handy to define the region as other of the West within Europe. The robust appearance of the global South in the art world forces us to realize that our privileged other position is no longer secure, since there were further others beyond the Cold War dichotomy, clamoring to be acknowledged. From that perspective, the minor distinction of the close other became increasingly blurred. The distinct nature of the region, rising from its turbulent history, began to take on different names such as alternative art history, parallel art history, among which the concept of horizontal art histories crystallized into a comprehensive theory. The globalization of the art world in mega pioneers, through a process of standardization, absorbed the difference between the center and periphery, while under the disguise of global art history and world art history, the ex-center tried to smuggle back its own power and position of control in the form of new universalism. The constant alertness as a survival strategy on the periphery had noticed this shift, and by expanding the scope of reflection, launched the concept of utter globality. The aim of getting to the passing lane in the heavy traffic led to the search for fellow travelers. That is, it became unavoidable to forge new alliances. Turning away from assurance from outside boosted self-confidence in locality, whereas the threat posed by the rise of nationalism and populism resulted in moving away from the local and national, as these terms have been appropriated and were therefore compromised. Instead, we see a move towards transnational and transregional, also named transperipheral histories, along with the rediscovered solidarity and alliance with other peripheral positions. Recognizing the limits of the Anthropocene worldview and related threats like climate change, environmentally conscious planetary art history was proposed. The latest theoretical tsunami that reached the region is made up of different terms and catchwords of decoloniality. Let's have a closer look now at the losses and deformities resulting from the hospitality of Procrustean, that is, from the effort of trying too hard to adjust to the mainstream. The latest trend, decoloniality, raises the question of whether the theory originating in Latin America as a reflection on its colonial history and fueled by the ambition of differentiating themselves from post-colonialism offers a proper container to fit in, particularly in reference to the transformation into decolonization, resonating on the terminology of denazification as well, employed mostly by Western scholars for Eastern Europe, ignoring local conditions and complexities on which the term is supposed to be applied, not to mention that the proposal is late a good 30 years. In countries where the transformation took the form of peaceful bargaining process between the outgoing and incoming political elites, the clientele of state socialism was able to smoothly transmit itself to the new formation without losing face. All the previous conflicts, harmful deeds, and official roles taken were swept under the carpet and have never been discussed publicly, at least not in Hungary. As a consequence of the roundtable discussions and negotiated revolution, a peculiar realignment was going on, namely that the ex-opposition and the ex-party bureaucrats of state socialism gradually found themselves in the same trench in the fight against nationalism and populism. The constant threat of the total and hegemonic power of the right-wing governments in more and more countries accelerated the amnesia and urged a focus on the present, all-pervading crisis. The so-called historical strife, the historians' debate, has never taken place in countries of peaceful transition, neither the art historians' debate. This has greatly assisted the rising nationalist regime in using communists and others as scapegoats on whom to blame any kind of domestic problems. The effective strategy was taken over and copied by semi-developed right-wing regimes eager to follow the path of the most successful illiberal leader. I put it differently. The process of decommunization has been actively facilitated by reigning regimes. They did not solicit advice on that, but rather warmly welcomed the similar scholarly tendencies. All the more so as the conservative, nationalist, illiberal, you name it, regimes are so fond of appropriating concepts and ideas of progressive leftist thinkers for the benefits of creating their own cultural vision. Let's have a look. Where have we gotten on our journey so far, and what are the road conditions like? It seems that construction works are going on everywhere. So better be cautious. Mind the gap and be aware that you are also watched. There is a recent tendency to revisit and scrutinize the political changes after 1989 in order to comprehend how we arrived to the current phase of severe global crisis, as well as to find escape routes or strategies to resist. Since new generations raised in capitalist conditions during the last 30 years have entered the cultural arena as active agents, for whom state socialism is a distant past, for critical thinkers amongst them, the surrounding and suffocating present is an obvious standing point from which to look back at history. Thus, there is a scholarly tendency that embraces radical left or neo-Marxist approaches and applies critique of capitalism based on world system theory for the period of transition. George Soros and his network, the Soros centers in the post-socialist regions, are the most appealing targets of harsh criticism. In exchange, it could be gained a VIP ticket to the trend-setting international circus. How those centers operated in different societies on the everyday basis, and what was the outcome and effect of their operation in local cultural scene has been ignored in order to put the theory in effect. As the saying goes, timing is everything, which is especially true in this part of the world. Not taking into consideration the circumstances and conditions of the historical moment when a critique is launched is a trap one could easily fall in. The meaning of any critical thoughts are prone to be hijacked if they resonate with the official rhetoric. In the autocratic right-wing propaganda, the other prominent Keyword next to communists and migrants for diverting attention away from economic hardship, growing inequality, corruption, and so on is Soros. It has been repeated endlessly until it evokes a visceral reflex of hatred and loathing, relying on a deep-rooted anti-Semitism in the region. Once again, the two extremes of the political spectrum arrived on the same platform: the leftist critic of globalization and the far-right scapegoating with its anti-Semitic overtones. The critique of local capitalisms mixed with socialist and feudal elements and their cultural production and operation is most welcome and needed. However, one can hardly find substantial critique of the existing institutional system, of the turnarounds of the dominating cultural politics and narratives. Whether it is due to pragmatism, existential safety measures, or to survival strategy bequeathed by the previous generations, the critique is mostly retrospective, benevolently oriented towards the safe haven of the past, where there is nothing at stake. When faced with poor visibility, one would be wise to slow down and look around. Selective art history, as I would name it, is in operation within these conditions. Thus, no discrepancy is revealed between scrupulous research and criticism of institutional structures, conservative cultural politics, opportunism in the past, and leaving untouched the very similar processes in the present unfolding in front of our eyes. Such anomalies as studying progressive art and progressive tendencies of the interwar period, for example, while accepting funds from official cultural bastions which actually blocks today's similar progressive critical art, can peacefully coexist with no conflict. Self-censorship bridges the gap, and the argument of rightful use of public money provides self-justification. The past functions as a substitute to the present, onto which the critical impulse will be projected. Coping mechanisms, strategies of adaptability are the heritage of the troubled history in the eastern part of Europe. It comes in handy that the disciplines traditionally passive resistance to different consecutive regimes had led to an apolitical standing point, Madalena. Welcome in the club. Avoidance of dirty politics and being sheltered from reality by lofty issues of aesthetics. The stubborn claim of being objective and impartial and the illusion of heroic resistance of the tempest of the ever-changing ideologies seems to necessitate the illusion of autonomy and independence of artists and art history. Yes. The deep-seated suspicion towards theory, especially the so-called new art history, or critical theory, you name it, threaten this gallant position in the Parnassus. Other disciplines of the humanities rush to adopt critical theories into their practice, following the call of the time, whereas art history can still afford to stand apart from these changes. The advancement of the discipline still relies in general on attachment to the lineage of high art, artists, aesthetics, male genius, based on the methods of microphilology, empiricism, obsessive fact-gathering, and the concomitant blindness to social, gender, race, and emancipatory issues. Sometimes, at the level of buzzwords, it seems that we are in parity with the international mainstream trends. However, a high price must be paid for taking a shortcut to get to the same destination. An example that while we join in the criticism of the extreme of recent cancel culture, for example, we have skipped over the original goal of the movement, which was to gain acceptance for minorities. Speaking about the ignorance of theoretical framing, social sensitivity and engagement by regional art history, and also about the urgent need for repoliticization of the discipline, I should hark back to my other keynote speech at an OICA conference a good 20 years ago, in which I paraphrased Serge Gilboa's phrase stating that the West stole the idea of social history of art, as the roots of the new critical thinking can be traced back to our very own intellectual circles in Central and Eastern Europe, and in the former Austro-Hungarian monarchy. In the 70s and again in the 90s, the advocates of new art history, the leftist intellectuals of the West, rediscovered social history as an outgrowth of the radical movements of '68 that followed the footsteps of radical thinkers of the revolutionary upheaval in Eastern Europe at the beginning of the century. Meanwhile, the intellectuals of the East Bloc distanced themselves from this heritage because ideologies and disciplines associated with the adjective social had been abused, oversimplified, and manipulated in our societies during existing socialism. The state's official cultural policy and Marxism were closely interlinked, therefore, the phenomenon of new art history, to which Marxism, psychoanalysis, and French theory providing intellectual foundation, remained suspect. 20 years ago, the account was surrounded by utter silence, which began to be interrupted only nowadays. Zsuzsa will, I hope, speak about this issue. I'm wondering how long the bastion of the ivory tower could be defended, legitimized by the haunting memories of appropriation and abuse of social political ideas by the now gone socialism. And how far do the present right-wing populist regime need to go to provoke the radicalization and repoliticization of our discipline? With regard to the coping strategies employed within the field, a peculiar phenomenon could be detected, namely that specific types of local art histories are nurtured due to our rapidly changing history, which managed to reverse direction even within a span of one generation. Hagiographic art history writing, as I would call it, is one of those in which the main elements are borrowed from martyrology, functioning as a kind of compensation for previous hardship and for being sidelined for so long. It could be practiced actually by both sides of the political spectrum, as all regimes are fertile at producing their own martyrs. Hagiography, by default, has to treat its subject with undue reverence. Consequently, there is no place for doubt or reservation. Even to suggest it is blasphemous or heretical. Of course, there is no problem with paying homage to artists who were neglected on political, ideological, and discursive basis, and whose work deserves it. However, it poses problem if artistic activities that overarch subsequent conflicting regimes aim to stop the course of history by the virtue of belief that it has ended with their triumph. The ordinary generational change is further complicated by the claim that moral reputations gained in the previous regime lasts forever, as it is often the case in post-socialist countries, so much so that glorified heroes are not bothered by their own gatekeeping and their demand to control younger generation of artist trends and attitudes, apparently without risking their residency in the palaces. Earn codes further complicate the task of interpretation. Following the political changes, leading progressive parties of previous time like MOBU now faithfully back the regressive conservative regimes and institutions. The topsy-turvy trajectory could overshadow and undermine appreciation even retrospectively. Often, generously practiced hagiography is in the service of ignoring serious flaws, as it stops and gets frozen at the moment of climax and turns it into apotheosis, keeping it clear of anything that follows the point of culmination. Concerning the margins, alternative culture and its relation to the mainstream, while advanced late capitalism recuperates its margin, other cultures, among them hybrid, rampant capitalisms, eradicate them or roll them out. Marginality advancing into the mainstream will not oppose the socio-political institution of culture, let alone official culture, but instead becomes part of it. Losing the celebrated alterity does not lead to any discrediting, neither does it to evoke the question of whether it operates in alongside or in opposition to the actual regime. Instead, as evidenced by the booming art market in post-socialist states, it nurtures the illusion of cultural freedom and prosperity. Allow me to shed light on this particular phenomenon with the help of an example from my own locality. In the Kadar era, the 3 T's in English promote tolerance, as you know, acted as the road sign. Those who fell under the category of ban were blocked. Experimental, progressive, alternative, contemporary artists, those practicing abstract art, and those who either metaphorically or literally opposed the system shared the same parking lot, irrespective of their position on the political spectrum. These artists on the sidelines were here after the collapse of the Soviet sodomite system and were able to move freely. The transformation and reopening of the roads after restrictions were lifted pushed everybody to full speed, leading to a bottleneck. It has been overcome before long by differentiating within the far from homogeneous group. The simplified opposition of liberal culture politics embracing modern art versus conservative and illiberal trajectories favoring traditional art does not really offer enough munition to comprehend the gradually restructured sane and the rearranged growth system. I offer to replace the 3 T's with the 3 B's of today. The first could be named brotherhood. Into this privileged, tightly knitted group of El Dorado, one may enter by accepting their banal, outdated ideas and be greatly compensated by being best. Bastardy, as I would name the second category, is the place of doom and gloom. They are inevitably bared of any visibility and are kept in darkness in the full meaning of the word. They are the ones who are walled out. Blockbuster is the third with members of the art business. These big hits are mostly abstract artists of the older and younger generation who successfully eliminate any kind of politics from their art. Within our context, this is the most remarkable formation. They are the real winners, as they are bestsellers without pledging their loyalty to the brotherhood, but strangely enough, still buttressed by wholesale bank acquisitions. Newcomers are desperate to be admitted to the new art institutions in Budapest, such as Q-Contemporary, a Chinese-affiliated local manifestation of the so-called opening towards the East. And HUB translates CREAM, the abbreviation is Hungarian Art and Business, a hub for oligarch, actually financed by the bank of the leaders, Strowman. It is highly symbolic that it resides in the place of the Club of Young Artists, the former location of alternative art. The euphoria around the booming art market is at heights, as if we had reached the land of Canaan, equated with free flow of art, which used to be the sign of freedom back in socialism. Irrespective of the intention and worth of the program, I do not want to deal with this. The financial and political interests behind these new venues are concealed. The skeletons are tightly locked in the closet. The glamorous venue on the Hungarian Champs-Élysées seems to be highly seductive to ambitious young artists fed up with bastardy and art historians who are not inquisitive about the meaning of business in its name. Now let's have a look at how art world in democratic societies relate to the art and business relationship. Pullman reads the notion of death of the avant-garde, not in a literal sense, but rather in the innate logic or drive of the art discourse. Avant-garde art always attacked the value system on which the commodity economy was based and separated itself from the commodity even when taking the form of commodity. Avant-garde, on their different names such as progressive, advanced, experimental, critical, so on and so forth, has attacked not just the traditional and conservative forms, Madalena, but has also targeted the socio-political institution of culture. This is the point where you provided me a case study. I'm grateful for that. At the point when it was equated with mainstream modernism and became canonical, as the account continues, it claims of marginality, autonomy, and superior morality of opposition would be discredited. The presupposition of this account is the constant reflectivity and critical awareness of advanced art, the real drive behind art and culture. Fiction of resistance ends by consuming it, in his conclusion. Such an awareness and reflectivity in the post-socialist discourse of contemporary art is hard to come by. The meaning of resistance and criticality was so strongly attached to political ideological opposition that it forgot to be translated and transformed into the new condition. It may be time to put self-critical art history and art into practice in this regard as well. Meyer Shapiro, the American forebearer of social art history, explored the role of the art market in shaping society's attitude in its heyday, the 60s, stating that art market is not innocent in its judgment of art, and the new awareness of art as precious speculative commodity now corrupts all awareness of art. His words could be applied to the Eastern European art market that is eager to join the exclusive club. In illiberal democracies in the semi-periphery, luxury, fancy cars of the Brotherhood and Blockbuster set up roadblocks, forcing fellow travelers off the road. The guide to the fast lane has already been devised and presented by leading institutions. Thus, there is no need anymore to seek clues to what art is all about. Instead, success in art are measured by global visibility, financial well-being, stardom, and celebrity status. To borrow Shapiro's, I'm sorry that it is so long, keynote speak used to be so long. Just three more pages. Okay? To borrow Shapiro's opt wording, what is disturbing is not that people profit by the rising prices of art, but the effect this knowledge has on the attitude to art everywhere. If late capitalism discursively engages its margins, we could name that, for example, MoMA's CMAC is a good example for that, and breeds parallel new radical alterity, keeping the revival of art in motion, autocratic hegemon cultures ostracize their margin. The discursive economy in these societies is slowed down, while dominating discursive agencies are expanding and establish control, proliferating the search for escape routes or bending the rules. Furthermore, the practice of stopping, reversing, rewriting, and erasing history in this part of Europe resonates aimlessly in all levels of the society, including art history writing. This might generate the sense that history starts with us, so there is no need to be connected to the life of before us. Discourse amnesia. For new agents, the scene they are entering is blank space where one could start from scratch, and there is no need to give credit to previous ideas, concepts, accounts within the same narrative. Unpredictable social conditions force the maximum effect of exploitation of a given moment. Who knows what tomorrow will bring? Next to the feeling of presentness, the fear of getting lost in the generational congestion also works against discursivity. Similarly, concepts are produced discursively, similarly to a relay race in which a member of a team takes turns and each person is counting on the other to do their part, that is, to hand the baton to the next runner. Lack of discursivity is therefore like a relay race in which a team member simply doesn't hand over the baton within a certain zone or time and instead runs further without even looking back. Or on the other way around, when instead of smooth exchange, the next leg aggressively takes over the baton. Toxic environment, hurt feelings, mental suffering, and pain are the side effect of the shortage of generational solidarity. Due to the hard-to-follow leapfrogs, discourse analysis is quite sporadic in our discipline in the region. When it comes to interpreting, changing ideological positions, loyalties, and narratives at the art scene, mostly a top-down approach is employed. High politics in always at hand to be accused, benevolently preventing us from putting our own house in order. The constant fight and ongoing emergency distract our attention from our own discourse. The omnipresence of politics and over-politicization of every day in the region allows us to put the personal responsibilities, contribution, and complicity to the back burner. To return to the metaphor of my life, of a title, it allows us to suppress, to relegate all these painful questions and potential confrontations to the unconscious. What is in the focus of discourse analysis if it is still practiced, and what is its aim, what is the agenda to uncover, is far from independent of the socio-political and cultural ecosystem either. The pendulum swings back and forth along the lines of effort to understand the zeitgeist. Research of the interwar era was eager to find surviving traces of the avant-garde in the repressive 30s. How these hidden elements outsmarted the doctrine of socialist realism was on the agenda of progressive art history writing during socialism. The expansion and acceptance of traditionalism and conservatism all around the region has stimulated the excavation deep into the complicity of the art community with the power, and also to find the roots of the tendency within the local art historical discourse as a matter of urgency. In connection to the question of future, one could also address the issue of responsibility outside of the discipline and the place of art history in our recent political cultural ecosystem and how it contributes to the well-being of a more just society. These demands are more frequently addressed by socially conscious artists with research-based activities than by art historians in general, who stubbornly stick to the 19th century understanding of the discipline. Finally, to prevent any allegation of homogenizing the region, I have to admit that I am also not free of my own historical experience and condition, and that the predicament of art history writing are drafted against the backdrop of my own recent locality. However, we must take into consideration that these developments cast a long shadow extending beyond its geographical border, hopefully not in Poland someday. I am also aware that the dilemmas I shared with you and those phenomena I introduced to you not equally pertinent to the different countries of our diverse region. No question about either that the practice of art history writing, even within national schools, differs greatly and is far from uniform. In the very same way as the tensions, obstacles, and escape routes could be rather wide. Yet, one has to look at her own backyard first before extending the scope of exploration to a regional level, to which our linguistic otherness is also a great obstacle. In spite of everything, I do believe that instead of segregated individual micro-achievements, it is communication, translation, as well as vertical solidarity conveyed in transgenerational knowledge sharing, and comparability within transnational collaboration that could lead us out from being stuck in the trap of history and mobilize our rich and enormous potential. Thank you very much.